Okay, the time is 7:15. I'm going to go ahead and call this February 10th, 2025 meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. We're going to start with the invocation and pledge led by County Administrator Angie Hill.
Please rise as you're able for a moment of silence, and then I will lead us in the pledge. Let us pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
We're going to start the meeting tonight with presentations, awards, and recognitions. We do have 3 items in this category, so we'll start with the Virginia Department of Transportation. They've got a lot of planning tonight, so we'll get you out of here first thing. Mr. Clark, thank you for being here.
Thanks very much. Someone, I think, up here said they were surprised to see me, but we've got everything set and ready to go. We're all just waiting for it to happen. Not sure what we're going to get. We've got something, snow, ice, but we're ready for it all. You might have seen the brine trucks out today, spraying all around the place, so that's a good thing. And it's not the first kind of weather incident we've had. In fact, that's what we've been doing most of the month, is catching up with storms, putting the roads back together after storms. So we have done, between the storms, some patching and machining and hauling stone to the gravel roads. Did some patching on 460 Business and Pilot Road, Fairview Church, Walton, Union Valley, machining roads up Fisher's View, Blue Springs, Dobbins Hollow. Southern half of the county has more unpaved roads. So that's where they spent most of their time. And a little bit of brush cutting. So mostly it's stuff between storms. I asked my crew to give me what kind of the things they've been working on. And one of the items here is fixing mailboxes. So we managed to clip a few of those, and we have to go and put those back. We get called and we get let known that we clipped a mailbox. Other things we're working on, tomorrow, in fact, we're having a meeting, not in person anymore, but it's the pre-construction conference for the project out at exit 114, the park and ride that's going in right there at the exit and Mud Pike. That's going to start here pretty soon. It's within the town, but it's of interest to everybody, I think, around, that we get a nice park and ride at that exit as well. It'll be well used. We are working on some of the speed limit adjustments at Childress Road and Dry Valley Road. We have to, even to extend an existing speed limit, it's not a matter of just moving a sign, because it's one there. It has to be studied. It has to be performed by a licensed traffic engineer, and the study has to be done. So they're working their way through that. And the other thing I want to mention, we don't have to decide on a date right now, but it's getting close to 6-year plan public hearing time. So I'll work with county staff to find a good date that works with all of you all before we get into a lot of budget stuff. I think we did in April last year. We might shoot for that again this year. I think that's a good one to gets in between some of the other business that the county has. And I think we'll be able to add a couple roads this year. So that's a good thing. And that's it. That's all I've got for right now.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I'm going to look around and see if anybody's got any questions. We'll start Supervisor Grafsky.
Thanks for the updates. Appreciate you being here. I'm glad that you brought up the 6-year plan, because I was going to ask you when we were going to bring that up, because I was contacted by one of my constituents about a road. So would it help if I sent you any information about that ahead of the meeting? Or
Yeah, well, is there a particular
Bobcat Lane?
Bobcat is on the 6-year plan. I've spoken to some of the people out there as well.
Fantastic.
So it's on there, and
Okay.
It'll probably stay on there, because generally boards don't, like messing with plans unless it's absolutely necessary.
Okay, great. And then the only other thing is, so on Merrimack, as I guess you're headed north towards Price's Fork, right there where the speed limit changes before, is it Matamoros, the kind of big S there, there looks like there's some overgrowth that sits in front of that speed limit sign.
Oh, okay.
And since right now, there's nothing there, it still kind of obstructs it a little bit. So maybe just get that trimmed up before stuff starts.
Yeah, when the
rolling
leaves
back.
come out, it will be, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Supervisor Biggs?
Okay, well, David, we emailed back and forth today, but can you give me an idea when VDOT might have the punch list ready to give to the county about what needs to be done on the 2 roads in Brush Mountain?
Yeah, we're very close to that. We pretty much got one of the majority of it done. That we want to run the language of it through some of our central office land use people, because there's a situation there with some drainage that could be construed as a dam, and we don't. I mean, they're very adamant about not putting dams into the maintenance system. So it's just a matter of getting some of that language. Most of it's all set, and I would guess probably within the week we'll have a good list ready
In
to
another
go.
week, okay. I'll report back to my constituents. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Supervisor King?
Appreciate the conversation before the meeting. And you're going to check on Stanley Road, what's happening there, right?
It's on what?
On Stanley Road.
Oh, on Stanley, yeah. It's down here as ditching, but I don't know why those barrels are still there. Maybe while they did the ditching, they were planning on staying and fixing some of that other drainage right there at Tyler Road. And I'll see why they still got barrels out there. Yeah, I'll find Stanley Road.
And we talked about last meeting about the gravel side of 5 Points Road.
Yes,
They're on the list to be scraped if it snows, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Supervisor Kids?
Thank you for being here. I know you got a busy day and night ahead of you. I'll bring up the one point I bring up every single time, but I'm going to leave one of those. I'll bring up one, the blinking light coming up Radford Road towards the top of the hill. Just said I'm going to bring it up every single time. That make sure that's taken care of. I know you said
Yes.
it's coming, so that's all I have.
Yeah, and I will say, the other one is the light, is it Price's Fork, or is it one at the Arsenal? Because I've sat out there several evenings now.
See, I told you. It's like I tried to tell
I know.
you. It's like one of those things. It's like a watch pot never boils.
It's what's happening.
So-
Now, I did see some backup. We did do some adjustment at the one at the Arsenal, because it was doing the same thing. It was having a green on left into the Arsenal, and backing it up, going towards Pulaski. The stuff I've seen now, I realized after I'd done it that a couple of the times I sat out there was before tech came back into session, and that might have an effect on things as people are trying to go back and forth and stuff like that. But I'll keep out there, and if you see it happen again, let me know, and especially the time, because it's really interesting once you start looking at it really carefully how waves come at different times.
It's only one time of the day, and it's at that half an hour window, and it's kind of a confluence of all kinds of stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
But thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Supervisor Bennett?
I had a chance to go down Taylor Hollow, and it's beautiful. Did you guys end up swapping, putting up a fence for getting more right of way or something? Or they have a beautiful fence up at this
Yeah,
point?
when we take down a fence, if there's any kind of remnants of a fence anywhere that we can find, that's one of the things, we do. It's not a true purchase of right-of-way, but property owners will tend, obviously they want the road. We don't buy right-of-way on a gravel road. But we will replace fences, depending on if we have to take down some trees, sometimes we can, I don't know if we give monetary compensation for a tree, but there might be some other things we can do. We could plant another tree, it's small, but we'll be looking at that very carefully in the next section, because I've talked to some of the property owners on the next section. And there are some trees that, would have to be taken down if we were to do a full even a full rural rustic widening. We may do some variable width in there to keep some of the trees, because there is some cattle in there that appreciate some trees every now and again. So we're going to try to work real close with the property owners through that next section, where obviously we didn't have any property owners. We had property owners, but no dwellings right there next. Now we're getting into a little bit more of a populated houses near the road area, and so we're going to have to be probably a little bit more careful. But yeah, we do replace fences.
So I love the curves, right? Because they're paved. I mean, it's just beautiful. I was surprised that it wasn't paved all the way from Luster's Gate, but it looks great. And I'm assuming that that's the type of road that will be for the next section also?
The next section will be similar to the part that's from Lester's Gate
Okay.
down, and that was done on purpose. Good, pros and cons on each one. The curve was done because plant mix asphalt, like was done there, it retains a little bit more heat, and you can melt snow and ice off of it a lot easier. You can put salt on that, although you don't like to do it in the first couple of years. The bad part of that is speeds get up pretty high when you do that versus the tar and gravel on the other part. The curve kind of takes care of the speed itself. So I know it looks kind of odd to have a surface treated part at the beginning, but it does keep the speeds down there. It retains more of a rural look to the road. And we'll do the same thing on the next part, because we really want to keep speeds down on the next part, because it's probably, like I said, it's probably going to be a little bit narrower due to the property owner's wishes in there. And so they will have a surface treat. Generally, we surface treat all of the newer, the rural rustic type roads, because that's what they are. They're rural rustic roads. You're not trying to build a,
And how often do they get maintained? On an annual, every couple of years basis?
when they're brand new, like we'll probably go through again next or this coming spring and put another surface on the first part from Lester's Gate down to the curve, a new surface treatment on there.
And
You
will
can only put so many on when they're first built, because it just doesn't, take really well when you can't put like 5 layers on there, but 5 layers over 5 years is really helpful. So we're not going to do that many, but we will do one next year, and then we'll, it's also good to let it settle out. You never know how it's going to go. You patch a few potholes, then you go over the surfacing. So now you've gotten the weak spots that have come out during that first season.
Switching gears to Nelly's Cave Road has brush and branches right at the edge of the road, mostly down at the bottom from the last storm. And then I noticed,
Okay, I see what you're saying. They're
Yeah.
already,
and then I noticed, 2 cables across the Lester's Gate, not far from the cheese factory. Is somebody doing
Oh,
that was,
they're traffic counters, yeah.
yeah, but there were 2, so I thought it was a speed.
No, I don't think they're,
Interesting.
I think that helps establish type of vehicle, class of vehicle, trucks versus cars.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Fitchkowski?
Yeah, I've got a brain teaser for you. I was told about a couple of our delegates had requested a budget amendment to put $25 million into the secondary road improvement program. And I'm not sure, but I think that's about what's in there every year, isn't it? 25 million? For the whole state?
No, it would be more
More than that?
that, I would think.
Okay, well, they were suggesting
I
that,
mean, that sounds like, when they say secondary improvement program, that's the secondary construction budget, your 6-year plan.
right.
Budget. Statewide, I mean, Montgomery County gets close to $500,000. Floyd gets over $1 million. There's 90-something counties. So that's why I would think it'd be more than 25 million for statewide.
Well, I think that's better than zero increase, so I think they're shooting for
25
that.
million extra is going to be great.
How would that affect, I know it sounds like each county has their own system of determining that, but,
There's a formula based on number of unpaved roads with a traffic count of over 50 that is eligible. And I believe there's a traffic count component to it also, or a population. It might be a population and lane miles of unpaved road.
so that probably
Because it's
wouldn't.
not traffic count, because we don't count them every year.
So if that were to be added to the budget, would that affect us in a big way, or would it be just a small increase for us? Just your guess.
My guess, it would be a small increase.
Okay. All right. Well, I was hoping for something better than that, but thank you for that information.
And I have 2 small things. They're notes to check. The streetlights at the eastbound 460 bypass ramp in South Blacksburg, So as you're getting on the bypass there before Christiansburg, the street lights, not the tunnel lights, but the street lights are totally out through that section when you drive through at night. If
So it's
somebody could-
eastbound, so after you come out of the tunnel and you're already down onto the main line?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, after you're through the tunnel, because the tunnel lights are working fine. So if somebody could check that. And then I think there's a street sign missing possibly at the Davis Street South Main intersection there at the hospital. So I know that's probably a pretty popular place for people to turn. There is it's just no street light there, or street sign.
The name
excuse me.
sign, yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody could check on that as well. And that's all I have. Does anybody else? Okay. Thank you, sir.
y'all.
Appreciate you being here with us tonight. Okay, coming up next on our agenda, we have a presentation from the Community Health Center of the New River Valley. We have Michelle Bronze with us here tonight.
Just right click to go to the right click. This one? Yeah. To go forward. Sorry.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Long day. Yes, always need those people to help you. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. Thank you for allowing us to speak on the agenda today. I'm Michelle Bronze. I'm the CEO of the Community Health Center of the New River Valley. And I know many of you already know what we do at the Community Health Center because I've spoken to you before and know some of you as well. But I do have a brief presentation that I'm going to go through. I am here today with a couple of my colleagues, my Chief Medical Officer and Chief Financial Officer. So as we conclude, or as we're going through the information, if you have a more detailed question in either a clinical area or financial area, I'm happy to have them come up and address those answers for you. I'm here today to put in a request to you. As a member of the Opioid Abatement Authority, we became a member of that group upon its initiation a couple of years ago. And so my hat today is twofold. One, to tell you a little bit about our Community Health Center and the work that we're doing, but also to tell you about the reason that we need to grow and how we plan on doing that. And hopefully request some assistance from the county to help us grow even more. So our mission, for those of you who are unfamiliar with us, is to provide accessible health care to all residents of the New River Valley, regardless of their ability to pay. Our patients who need assistance in paying pay on a sliding fee scale. You will recall that the Community Health Center became a federally qualified health center about 10 years ago, and prior to that, we were a free clinic in your community. Originating in Christiansburg, we've been around for a long time. We were around for 30 years as a free clinic down the street prior to becoming an FQHC. And since we've been an FQHC, have grown tremendously. Oops, wrong side. You, of course, are familiar with the building. This is your building. This is a Montgomery County-owned building that has had several lives prior to our going into it in 2003. Since 2003, we have added additional sites, one in Petersburg, one in Dublin, and we also opened about a year and a half ago in Pulaski County High School. We serve patients who need medical care, dental care, behavioral health, substance use services, and mental health care. Our services are integrated to provide comprehensive and coordinated care. So all of our specialists and physicians speak to each other about their patients' care, and that helps us be able to provide more holistic care for all of our patients. And of course, we do serve infants through senior citizens at our clinic. So those of you who were born and bred here in the area know this representation of that particular building on this postcard that I found on eBay years ago. Mr. King, you're smiling. Do you remember that? It was well known. The family Roberts owned this motel for many years, shuttered it in the 70s, and it has lived many lives since then. But we, of course, are in the building on the left. And after we grew out, which is your owned building, after we grew out of that, however, we began renting spaces across the courtyard. So we have 4 additional spaces that we now rent from another owner because we just grew too quickly. But we do love our motel. Another representation of our growth in 2002, we served 576 unique individuals and provided them 1,170 visits or appointments. Last year, we served 6,117 patients with 30,473 visits and almost have 100 individuals on staff. When I came to the clinic in 2005, we had about 24 staff as a free clinic, so we have grown in that way as well. The need is great. So some of you have heard me talk in other venues before, here as well, though, a couple of years ago, about that when we realized that we needed to do something outside of that building, we began looking for new space, and in 2020 purchased land on Acres Farm Road at the end of that cul-de-sac. The space constraints in our current facility will not allow us to hire more staff. And right now I employ 5 dentists as an example at all of our facilities, yet we have close to 1,900 people on our waiting list for dental care. Here is a rendering of our new facility and our timeline. We will be groundbreaking in May, is our hope. After we purchased the lots in 2020, we had the intention of moving on to build fairly quickly. However, interest rates went up, supply chain issues occurred, and we kind of put a pin in it until this past year and began organizing last summer, hired an architect firm, A&E firm, and began the process. As a part of this, of course, our due diligence is looking for how are we going to pay for this new building. You'll see the breakup of our revenue sources there. We are currently in the silent phase of our capital campaign. So you probably haven't heard too much about it, but once the groundbreaking occurs, we will be making it a public campaign. So our request to you is to help us in providing some financial assistance through the OAA to be used in support of the capital costs. This will help defray the costs of the bank loan. The way we came up with our figures was we took 44% of the square footage of the new facility that's solely dedicated to patients who are there receiving either substance use, mental health services, or prevention services. There was I think maybe a 8-page paper that was posted for your review on the agenda for this evening, so I hope you've had a chance to look through that. It provides much more detail than I have here. Outlined, though, in that document is our request for 2 phases of funding. One, to assist in help offsetting the A&E costs, and the second, to help with construction costs. We are the largest provider of medication-assisted treatment services in the New River Valley, even more so than the Community Services Board. We have a long waiting list for those services. And again, we're restricted due to the number of staff we have and the space constraints for those staff to see patients. Once we move center-wide, we will be able to serve an additional 1,200 individual patients annually. Your Board of Supervisors many years ago invested by allowing us to use that motel free of charge all of this time. So you are invested in this organization. I thank you for it. We've done well, and we've served, I think, very well the patients, the residents of the New River Valley, those who choose to be patients of ours. We appreciate the fact that we've been in that space. But growing would allow us to do several things. Keep those individuals out of the hospital emergency departments, therefore costing more money, and building up the workforce in the area. Your investment will help us move forward and will have an enduring, lasting legacy in this community. Now, you might ask, what do you want to do with the motel? Well, we'd like to keep it. We really don't want to move out of it if allowed when the time comes. I hope that what we can do is actually add some more specialty services for pediatric patients in that building. It's already set up appropriately. And pediatric patients who are on Medicaid insurance lack services in the New River Valley. We would love to be able to bring in dentists, pediatricians, pediatric orthodontists to move into the current facility and kind of, just be an offshoot of what we're doing in the new building. So thank you for your consideration. If there are any more detailed questions, as I said, I'm happy to try to address them myself.
Okay. Thank you so much. Ms. Hill has something to add. We'll start with her.
Michelle and I met recently to discuss this project, and it's important for us to bring it to you now because the cycle for applying for additional funding from the Opioid Abatement Authority is about to begin. We need to do a little bit more research about whether or not the abatement funds can be used for the construction costs, but we feel comfortable with the A&E cost. And the county does have some funds available that we have already set aside, and some of them have come from the Opioid Abatement Authority itself and some through direct disbursements, settlement funds.
Do you think that we would be ready by our next meeting to have a discussion about this?
I think we would.
Okay, thank you. And now I will turn to my colleagues. Supervisor Bone, do you have any questions?
I'd like to wait.
Okay,
and do it.
sure.
I want to kind of hear this because I know this is a very good service, and I want to make sure that we're in the right spot. And I know I need a little more information based on what you just said, so I'll hold off right now.
Okay. Okay. Supervisor Grafsky, Supervisor Biggs?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm waiting. Go ahead, Supervisor Bone.
I have many more than 2 questions, so if you would like to go first. Okay, so I'll try to figure out which ones. Quick one. On one of your beginning slides, you said over the last 12 years, it's really 22, I'm thinking. The numbers from 2002 to last year.
Did I say 12?
It said 12 on your slide.
Oh, okay.
When you mentioned 5 dentists that you have right now, are they all full-time?
They are.
And so when you're talking about if you get to keep the motel, how many more dentists full-time would you employ?
We'd be able to employ at least 2, potentially another half-time dentist as well.
Do you have difficulty finding these people? Recruiting these people,
We,
rather?
we have had, dentists are difficult to recruit. We often have them come to us right out of school because we're able to offer loan repayment through our status as an FQHC. However, one of the ways that we're hoping to offset that issue that we have is by starting a dental residency program. So dentists, like physicians, have the option of going to a 1 or a 2-year dental residency after they graduate. They're a dentist, but they go somewhere to learn more, to become more specialized. We had the fortune last year, actually I think it was the year prior, to receive a planning grant to open a residency right here in Christiansburg. There are no others in this part of the state. Typically, a residency is affiliated with a hospital. There is one at Roanoke Memorial, for example, but that's it. So we're almost through our 2 years of planning. After that, we would be looking to become certified by the Dental Association that would need to come in and certify us. And once that occurs, then we can begin recruiting. We have the opportunity to bring in 6 additional dentists, dental residents, and our hope, and the reason that we won the grant, is that we would be able to have them fall in love with the New River Valley, regardless of where they're coming from across the country, and stay here and not leave, because that's often what happens, if I'm recruiting someone from New York, for example. So we were fortunate to be able to, just have that coincide and with our development of this building. And so, yes, it's difficult to recruit, but we're really hoping to grow our own. And we'd be doing that as soon as the building opened.
That's pretty fantastic. My next question, and I'll stop at whatever number this is. It seems to me that you have duplicative services with NRVCS and perhaps other agencies in the area. Can you differentiate what you do versus them?
I
On the
can.
mental health, opioid, and prevention stuff.
The CSB sees patients who are a lot sicker than ours are. We refer patients to them for inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment as well. They also have psychiatrists, like child psych. We do not employ those. So we have a wonderful relationship, and it's reciprocal. We refer back and forth. They see patients who are really a lot sicker than ours. They have medication assisted treatment, however, on a very small level. And we have a program called the OBAT program, Office-Based Addiction Treatment, that is also something different than what they're doing. That program, which my CMO could speak to if you're interested in more details, requires a patient to not only receive MAT, medication-assisted treatment, but also go through counseling. And to stay in the program, they have to meet all the requirements. So we do 2 very distinct types of clinical work from each other, and they do it at a very deeper level.
But they would say that they have prevention services and substance use treatment also.
They would.
Yeah, but it's to a more deeper, okay, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Supervisor Kitts.
So that kind of led to another question, because I saw you said a certain percentage of the space being used for mental health and for opioid addiction, things like that. So when you're talking about the expansion of space, are we talking about inpatient? We're talking about residential for that? Or are we just talking about daytime or?
Yes, daytime, what we would term outpatient care. We have no inpatient care at all.
So how many counselors are you thinking about bringing on if you expand this and the opioid funds are used for this?
I think identified in the slide that there'd be 2 or 3 that we'd be bringing on. Physicians. So if, Dr. King Mallory.
I just wondering about the social work aspect, that's all. Trying to figure out the
We'd be able
counselors as
to-
opposed to the doctors.
So the doctors and the social workers work hand in hand with each other. So we'd be able to bring on 2 new doctors Dr. King Mallory is an MD, for example, and she works with this population, so that's why I'm going to let her speak to it. And she also works, our doctors also work with the social workers, so I think we'd be able to employ four or five new social workers as well. And I know clinically you can probably tell a little bit more than I can.
Yeah, so currently, for example, we don't have enough space for the social workers we have in the clinic, so they have to rotate through work from home and coming into the clinic. The majority of our patients prefer face-to-face appointments, but we try to kind of filter patients who are willing to do televisits to the providers while they're working at home. So having an in-person space for those face-to-face appointments is going to be critical. But just to explain what we do as an OBAT, so we have an initial program where there could be a patient who self-identifies that they're ready for addiction treatment. There may be another provider in the community who reaches out to us, or we also have a bridge program with the local hospitals. So say there's a patient who's admitted in the ICU for alcohol withdrawal. It may be difficult for them to go to NRVCS for same-day access. They're anxious about it. They don't know when they're going to be seen or be able to be scheduled. The hospital can actually contact us and say, we have this patient who's ready for treatment. At that time, we can have one of our peers or our community health workers actually go to the hospital and meet with the patient while they're still admitted. We could do what's called a pre-screen with them, where we discuss their readiness for treatment and to see if they're appropriate for our program and if we would meet their wishes. And then we can actually arrange for them to be seen in our clinic the same day that they are discharged, so that there's no time for them to encounter the struggles that they were previously encountering and potentially have a relapse before they're able to see us and gain that support. When they're in our program, they have access to peer support, where our peers will meet them in the community or at their homes. They'll go get coffee. They'll go with them to doctor's appointments to help advocate for them. And then they come once weekly in general to the clinic. We have a separate space where they feel valued and they feel like it's kind of their own hangout area. They have their own lobby. We have coffee. We have snacks for them. They sign in. They see the nurse. They do their drug screen. We also do any vaccines that they're due for. We draw labs that they're due for. And then they start group. We usually have anywhere from 8 to 12 patients per group. And we have a total of 5 groups right now. And while they're in group, myself or another addiction services treatment provider will pull them out temporarily one by one. During that appointment, we address their substance use disorder, but we also address any other medical conditions that they're dealing with. So we're addressing their diabetes, their hypertension, their depression, any other mental health conditions that they're dealing with at that time. We treat them, and then we send them back to group. So it's a one-stop shop for them. It decreases their missed work. It decreases their transportation barriers. And overall, it's just really a great service. That's how we differ a little bit from New River Valley Community Services.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Fidjakowski, did you have any questions? I skipped over you completely. Okay. And I don't have any questions either. Thank you both, and your colleagues in the back there. Thank you for being here in this presentation, and we look forward to taking it up at a future meeting.
Well, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our third presentation tonight is from Montgomery County Sheriff Hank Parton. He is going to present on Deputy Police Officer EMT training. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for having me. I'm going to be super short. Don't have a lot to give you other than what I am presenting is extremely important. A few months ago, Blacksburg Police Chief Brewster and I were discussing EMTs. And I had spoken with Michael Geary, our expert at the county. Todd had spoken with Dave English, Chief of Blacksburg Rescue Squad, and we all kind of had the same idea at the same time. As deputies and police officers are responding to scenes where medical assistance is needed, why do we need to wait for an ambulance? So we decided to train some of our folks as emergency medical technicians. They will have the equipment that EMTs have on the ambulances, and if it's a life-saving event, which unfortunately a lot of what we respond to is, they can start rendering the aid, the same aid that an EMT is going to render when they arrive on the scene. And quite possibly, many lives could be saved. The numbers we have for participants, we have 4 Blacksburg officers, we have 6 Christiansburg Police Department officers, and I have 16 deputies from the Sheriff's Office that want to be involved with this program. We also have enlisted the services of Chris Crookshanks. Chris is an adjunct EMS instructor, emergency medical services instructor at New River Community College. He's a paramedic, infection control, and training officer in Floyd County. He is a state certified EMT instructor and has instructed at the Blacksburg Fire Department for quite some time. Chris is more than willing to help and conduct this training. The cost of the training, the total cost is right at $16,000. I was speaking with some fine folks at Lewis Gale Montgomery one day. They were very interested, and since then I have acquired 3,000 of the 16,000 from LGM. Very generous of them. So what we need to complete the program is $12,600, and the reason that amount is a little strange is because the student participant fee is $500. There needs to be another $100 for each student added for their e-material, study books, and testing at the end, so that they can become state certified EMTs. So basically what I'm asking for is $12,600 to complete the program. And any questions, I'd love to field them.
Great, thank you so much for bringing this forward, Sheriff. I think, is Lewis Gale also going to be the supervising physician of your program?
Michael and Dave English were going to speak to 2 of our doctors who are very familiar with that process.
Okay.
Dr. Eakey and Dr. Stanley. I have not spoken with either one of them myself yet, but I certainly will.
And that's an incredible contribution as well.
Yes.
So thank you for bringing this forward, and let's see what kind of questions we have. I've got heads shaking at me. All right, I'll start with Supervisor Grasky this time.
All right, thank you for that presentation. I totally agree with the significance of the training. And so you mentioned that, they would have essentially the same tools, drug box, things like that, would be available on an ambulance. Am I correct in that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, and the reason I bring that up is, as you may be aware, there's some regulatory changes in how those are managed at the individual station level, or in this case, the Sheriff's Department, Blacksburg PD, Christiansburg PD, things like that. And so I just wanted to make sure that we're taking those regulations into consideration with this program and having to manage all those, specifically the drug component, the pharmaceutical component of the things that those deputies and officers would be carrying around.
Certainly. We will have the experts involved. Michael Geary, our coordinator, is going to be involved in the program as well as Chris.
Okay.
So I don't foresee any problems there, and if there are, I'm sure we'll handle them.
Figure out a way to
Yes,
navigate it. Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Supervisor Biggs?
When did you want to start the program?
I'm sorry.
When did you want to start it? Like
The
right away?
training begins in latter May
Like,
and
okay.
runs through latter August.
Okay. And so you would need the funding, you're asking for the funding now, is that correct?
The next month or two,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, all right. I think it's a great idea personally,
Yes, ma'am.
because you do arrive on the scene a lot of times before anyone else can get there, so.
Sure. And we have many officers and deputies now that already have a lot of training. They just don't have that certification. So,
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor King?
I appreciate all that you're doing. I really do. I got my EMT and I know how much work it is. It's training all the time. And a lot of times when we show up on scene, your people's already there. And like I said, I get a little emotional when I talk about first responders because I've seen a lot of it. I do appreciate every one of you. Thank you.
yes, sir. Thank you.
Supervisor Kitts?
No, I'm full support of this. You know I am. So no, don't have any questions.
Great. Supervisor Bade?
I'm in full support, but I do have a question. You mentioned that this would save lives. In the last 5 years, how many lives do you think we could have saved if this was in place 5 years ago?
So obviously, I do not have that number offhand, but I can tell you without the training, we have saved many.
No, I know that. Yeah. So with
So
the
we
training,
could cover chest seals, we could cover gunshot wounds, we could cover ejections from vehicles. The deputies and police officers save lives whether they have the EMS training or not. The EMS training is just allowing them to take it to another level.
I guess what triggered in my mind when you said that statement was at some points we get notified when people pass away because of an accident or something like that, you know, as it really, you know, when law enforcement, I guess, or fire rescue or whatever are involved. And I haven't heard of a death recently for a long time. And maybe, you know, we just aren't being notified for them. I don't know how many people do die because of what goes on in the county. So I was just wondering.
I do not have that number with
And
me.
I don't need the number. I was just curious if you had a sense of how many you could. Thank you.
Vice Chair Fijikowski?
I am just really grateful and very proud that there are that many police officers willing to take that on, because that is a big job. I think that was one of my fears, even though you receive medical training, and not to the extent of an EMT, was always to get to a scene where somebody really needed the EMT and not just somebody standing there calling for help. So I think the program's great. I think it'll be utilized quite a bit, and yeah, I'm 100% behind it.
Hank, you know I support this. When we spoke, I think I expressed to you, and I'll express to everybody here, how incredibly grateful I am that you brought this forward and that you're working with Christiansburg and Blacksburg. So this will be a regional initiative. Just shows how well you are collaborating with the chiefs and getting things done. So thank you so much, and
Well-
we'll bring this back.
That's how we roll.
Yeah, well, it's very appreciated. And I guess that's all we've got for you, sir. Thank you.
One last point Supervisor Fijikowski brought up. All these individuals that are going to do this, they're doing this in addition to their workload. So a lot of these folks are going to work full 12-hour shifts and do this in the evening. And if they're not doing that, they're going to come in and do that when they're off. They deserve a lot of credit just for wanting to do it. So thank you all so much for listening to me and supporting.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, next on our agenda, we have a public hearing. This is for a special use permit for a telecommunications tower. And our Director of Planning, Bree Hopkins, will be giving us a presentation.
Good evening. So this site is located in the eastern portion of the county. You can see it's indicated here by the star. It is just off of North Fork Road within the Elliston Industrial Park. So this is the site here. This is the aerial photo. Enterprise Drive, the private section is here, and then this is the public section of Enterprise, and then this is North Fork to orient you. This is the planned industrial part of the industrial park, and then this is the manufacturing zoning district. Everything around it here is agriculture. We do have some general business and some residential zoning across the street. So the site is zoned manufacturing M1. It is on 3.914 acres, and the request is to allow a 195-foot monopole freestanding telecommunications tower with a 4-foot lightning rod, so it'll be a total of 199 feet. The leased area is 52 by 65, and the fenced-in area will be 42 by 55. This tower, if approved, would provide at least 3 co-location opportunities. So this is the site plan. You can see it's located in the corner here next to the Enterprise Drive intersection. There is a loop road that would go through there, so they would enter here and then they could come out on Enterprise, come back out on North Fork. And then this is the private portion of Enterprise. The existing company that's there also has an entrance here. And this is the elevation view of the tower. You can see T-Mobile would occupy this first spot here, and then there would be 3 co-location opportunities. This is the images of the site. This is at the entrance, North Fork Road, looking down towards Roanoke Street. And then this is North Fork Road looking up towards Interstate 81. This is Enterprise Drive. And then this is a look at the site as seen from the existing water treatment facility. So this site has an SUP for an approved truck repair, storage shop, and office establishment for SR Golf Hauling, with a condition on it that stated it had to comply with the covenants, easements, etc. of the Elliston Lafayette Industrial Park. Covenant 17 does limit the height to 50 feet. However, it does have an exception for towers, wireless, or television masts with written approval from the zoning administrator. So the zoning administrator did look at this request just as it pertains to height and did grant approval for the exceeded height request. That does not include any appropriateness of the proposed use or anything. It was just an evaluation on the height and whether it was appropriate for this lot. There are low transportation impacts. There will be some construction, but the roads are currently used by industrial traffic, so we do not expect any increase in impacts due to that. VDOT, of course, took no exception to the request. The Montgomery County Public Service Authority has advised they do have lines near there, so they have requested that Miss Utility be contacted to make sure there's no interference, to have those site marked prior to any work. And, of course, water and sewer are not required for this use. The site is not located in a FEMA-designated flood zone. It will be evaluated for compliance with erosion and sediment control standards by environmental services. However, they do not propose land disturbance greater than the 10,000 square feet. There is no off-site noise. The tower will have a steel finish that's non-reflective, so it doesn't produce the glare. And no additional lighting is proposed, as they will not be required to have the air navigation lighting by FAA due to the height. They will only deploy the FCC required site identification and emergency signage. I will tell you, since the preparation of this presentation, I have had a conversation with a member of emergency services, and they have indicated that for that area, the Elliston Fire and Rescue may want to have a location on this tower to help improve their radio service in that area. So the setbacks in the M1 zone, as you can see, 35 feet front, 10 feet sides and rear. And then those are your proposed setbacks for the tower, 144.6 feet on the front and 499 on the left side, and around 50 on the right side in the rear. Your comprehensive plan designation is village expansion, and it's further designated as mixed use, as you can see here in the purple. And our comprehensive plan does encourage co-location on existing towers. However, if we do look at new structures, it says they should be located in an area to provide the least negative impact on the citizens. It actually lists industrial parks as one of the preferred areas for these structures. So based on that, this could probably be characterized as one of the most preferred locations. We did send the application materials to Roanoke County due to the proximity of the request. We have not received a response from them. Other relative comprehensive plan policies, it does provide for the orderly extension of services in an area that's needed, and it would promote and facilitate the provision of emergency services because it would give them some additional coverage in that area. So as stated, a 195-foot monopole tower with 4-foot lightning rod to improve voice and advanced data communications. It will be used by T-Mobile and has the potential for up to 3 other cellular providers. Proposed site will be required to meet landscaping code, and that will be evaluated during site plan review. They did not conduct a balloon test in this area. We also do not have any propagation or coverage maps as state code changed, so we can no longer require those in the application packets. We do have some additional regulations for special uses for telecommunication towers. I just wanted to remind everyone of what those are. They have to be maintained with a galvanized finish. Dish antennas shall be neutral, no logos or advertising of any kind. We do require a written agreement for permitting future co-locations of facilities, and we also require a written agreement for prompt removal should it be abandoned, and that's at the responsibility and cost of the tower owner or landowner, and we do keep that for the life of the tower in that file. All towers shall comply with FAA requirements, including those related to Virginia Tech Airport. This is not within the airport overlay, of course. So the Planning Commission held their public hearing on January 8th, 2025. There were no speakers at that public hearing, and they did recommend approval on a 5-0 vote. We did have 4 absences that evening. And they did recommend the following conditions. The tower shall not exceed a height of 199 feet total. The tower shall not have lighting unless required by FAA. The site development shall be in general conformance with the concept plans that were submitted as part of the application. And the tower shall be monopole design. Dishes shall not be installed above the lowest co-location elevation, and all wiring and cables shall be located inside the monopole structure. Adjoining property owners were notified. We do have a public hearing sign on the property, and we have ran legal ads in the News Messenger. We have not received any inquiries regarding this request, so there may be some here to speak tonight. I will take any questions. The applicants are also here, and they do have a presentation following me.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Bree? Or Vice Chair Fidzikowski?
So from the way you described it, it's going to be in their current parking lot, pretty much, right?
Yes, it's going to be right here in this corner.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Bree, if you'd like. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
So if it's a T-Mobile pole, do our fire rescue, public safety have to have T-Mobile service?
Normally, most tower owners will permit emergency services to locate. I'm sure the folks here with network towers could answer that question.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
All right, if we could get the applicant's presentation loaded.
Yes, we can.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you all, members of the board, for the chance to speak with you tonight. My name is Charlie Alvis. I'm a lawyer with Williams Mullen in Charlottesville here representing Network Towers. Sam Averna from Network Towers is here with me as well. I do have a couple of slides, but they are somewhat repetitive of what you just heard, and that was a great summary, so I won't spend too much time saying things twice. This is just location information, zoning information. This is a different aerial shot, but you can see the tower is this pin right here, well within reach of the two major highways, 81 and 460 going through here, as well as the businesses and other consumers of data right here in the Elliston area. These are just some of the objectives here: improving overall connectivity, school, work from home, etc. You have the fire department right there and 2 schools nearby that would be served by this coverage. We are not required, under the application rules, to submit propagation maps, but just to give you all a sense of what the goal is here. On this map, the green is good coverage, and you see the orange star where we're proposing to put the tower. So this was existing. This is with the new tower, so you can see how much more green comes in there and how much more coverage would be provided. This is just another picture of the site plan, and the yellow star again is in the corner where the tower would be. This chart, similar to the one you saw before, on the far right side, you see sort of how far over the setbacks the structure would be, so well over all the requirements. And this is just another picture of the site elevation, and you see where the heights of the different arrays would be. T-Mobile would be at the top, but then to answer your question, Supervisor, the emergency services could be on the tower as well with their own equipment. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any more questions to follow up? Supervisor Bone?
So our emergency services would have to put equipment on that tower. Is that what you're saying? They couldn't use the T-Mobile?
Well, I think the T-Mobile equipment is there for T-Mobile customers, right? And then you all have your own equipment. Is that, am I understanding that? Yeah, that's right, yeah. So usually one of the slots goes to emergency services.
Gotcha.
And the other slots go to other carriers.
And help me understand how cell phone services work. Sometimes cell phone services can use other people's, like if T-Mobile if I'm a Verizon and T-Mobile is the only tower in sight, sometimes they'll connect, sometimes they won't. What do you call that? And is that possible?
I'm not an RF engineer on this, but what I can tell you is that the equipment is, I think you may be thinking of co-location where there's a tower and there's multiple carriers on each tower. So I'm not sure how it works if I'm a T-Mobile customer and I'm connecting to Verizon Signal. I think it's that the equipment is carrier serves customer. And, but the idea behind a co-location is that you can get as many carriers as serve this area on a single pole, and that's what most counties want to see.
But the point is because T-Mobile's at the top, they have the best coverage, and then whoever's below them have a little bit less. Is that correct?
I think that's correct, yes.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Now, I didn't have anybody sign up for the public hearing, but anybody that wants to speak to this specific special use permit application is welcome to come forward. We're going to put the guidelines for our public hearing on the screen. And is there anybody that would like to speak to this application? Seeing none, we'll close that public hearing. This decision is scheduled for a vote later this evening in the new business section of our agenda. And we will move on to public address. Guidelines for public address are back up on the screen. I do have one person that signed up to speak, though we will not limit the ability to speak at public address to just that one person. Anybody that's in the audience that would like to speak is welcome to come forward. But we'll start with you, Mr. Wayman Pack.
Madam Chair and board members, my name is Wayman Pack. I live on Piney Woods Road in Ryder, and tonight I'm going to do something a little different. I'd like to present a PSA on a growing scam. MoneyWise newsletter headline, January 25th, 2025. They stole our dream. Couple's retirement plan scuttled after thieves stole their vacant Massachusetts property and sold it for half its worth. I want to share some information that I recently acquired concerning an expanding scam occurring in our country. As you may or may not be aware, scammers are creating documents that appear to give them ownership of property they do not own. They sell the property to unsuspecting buyers and then disappear, leaving 3 victims in their wake: the actual property owner, who may not realize what has happened until they do not receive a tax bill and begin to investigate; the buyer, who has paid a down payment and may be making payments on the property; and the lending institution, who thinks that the title is valid and that they hold a legitimate mortgage on the property. The rightful owner then has to go to court to try to prove their ownership, likely costing thousands of dollars in attorney's fees. And even then, there are cases where the forgery was so good and enough time had passed that they did not prevail. You've maybe heard of companies advertising them as title lock. Here's some information on those companies that may charge $15 a month or more for the service. You cannot lock your title. Companies advertising as a title lock service are only periodically monitoring the owner of record and notifying you of a change. There is no insurance or legal help beyond notification. Do not depend on looking at property records online, as they may not be current. I know this from experience. I acquired a title to a property last May, and in September it was still listed on a county's website under the previous owner's name. Most targets are the elderly or owners who may live in another jurisdiction. The owner may not have any heirs, and the property likely does not have any current liens against it. The company that I reviewed is not Better Business accredited, and their product is not title insurance, which is one-time purchase that protects you or your heirs against any claim against the validity of your ownership prior to the date you bought the property. Companies that offer title lock services are fueling, then preying on fears that someone's going to steal their home from them. With the rise of real estate scams, our clerk of the circuit court's office offers a free sign-up for property monitoring, they will send you an alert when someone records a title to property in your name. By going to the clerk's webpage on the Montgomery County website, you can contact the office with your request. They will email you a link for you to sign up for this free service, and it may not stop something illegal from being started, but you will be alerted to the process at an earlier stage and be in a better position to stop it before it goes too far. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward? Come on up. Please state your name and where you reside, and you have 4 minutes.
Hi, my name is Alice Hayes. I reside at 2245 Mud Pike, Christiansburg, Virginia, 24073. And I wanted to take a moment to speak about the presentation we heard regarding training police officers and sheriffs and deputies and such with EMS training. I definitely want to start by saying I have deep respect for our law enforcement and the dangers they face and what they are doing for our communities. They're putting themselves out there, and I understand that they all just want to be helping people. That said, there is a disturbing pattern of sedative use by EMS under law enforcement direction. An AP investigation found between 2012 and 2021, 94 people died after being injected with sedatives by EMS under direction of law enforcement as chemical sedatives. And you may remember in 2019, Elijah McCain died from being injected with ketamine under the direction of law enforcement as he was being apparently combative and such. And my concern is that sometimes the duties of EMS and police are at odds. And I want to make sure that there's never a situation where there are police officers having to choose between doing what is in the medical best interest of the patient and what is in either their best interest, their partner's best interest. You know, I don't want somebody to have to be thinking, I don't want the person rendering medical aid to be thinking, am I still going to be getting home to my family? And that, I don't want them putting that lens across all of the medical choices that they give to their patients. And further, you know, if there are other police officers at the scene, is their duty truly going to be the best interest of the patient before them? Or will it be influenced by social and hierarchical issues in the police station. If, say, there's somebody on scene, an officer with a higher rank, and they give an order that countermands the best medical interest, what happens? Does the EMS have the ability, the EMS certified officer have the ability to say, no, this is a medical issue and I'm going to refuse that order? Or are they going to be put in the position of having to choose between their job and the best interest of the citizens? And these kinds of concerns, I don't think there's a way to have, yes, give them the training. Any training they have to save lives is good, but if you are also giving them the ability to inject people with ketamine essentially at will, I think it's a very concerning precedent. And I really question if it's possible to separate out the authority structures and the social structures thoroughly enough that police interests are not informing medical decisions. And that is all. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward? Good evening.
Chris Walsh, 1370 Ruby Street. I sent all of you an email tonight about the EMS stuff with the town and their request. I also sent you the link to the Emergency Services Committee meeting they had. I would recommend that all of you watch the meeting, read the letter. Then you're going to have to go back and watch the meeting again and go, well, but that's not what they said in the meeting, and that's not what's in the letter. From statements like they don't want different colored shirts in the firehouse, meaning they don't want mixing of county and town things, but in that draft letter, that's exactly what it says, a partnership. I'm sure you all already know how I feel on except the two new people, which I emailed them, but the Montgomery Museum and giving them money, I think the county got it wrong with the tax exempt status. And as far as the EMS stuff goes, I think it's a great thing to have them. I think there's some misconceptions. My wife was a Navy corpsman. She was an EMT. She went through EMT school, was 2 weeks. I went through at one of my military commands, was 30 days. You can't push drugs. You had to go through ACLS school, which is a whole different course and a lot longer. Or you had to be a paramedic to push drugs. Your average run-of-the-mill EMT riding an ambulance isn't injecting anybody with anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward and address the board? Good evening.
Hello, Brandy Faulkner, 607 Hampton Court in Blacksburg. Just wanted to come and say thank you very much for being responsive to our request to try to figure out what we can do about the housing conditions of low-income people in Montgomery County. And we really look forward to trying to figure this out with you all. We thank you so much for responding to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come forward during public address? Okay. Seeing nobody coming forward, we're going to close public address. There is no addendum tonight for the agenda, and I'm going to go. We normally take a break after work session, but because we were front loaded a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and take a break before we start our work session. So it is 8:28 now. We were going to take a break until 8:38, and then we'll be back. Thank you. We have 2 items in work session tonight. We have preliminary revenue estimates for fiscal year 26 and a comprehensive plan update related to Montgomery matters. Can I have a motion to go into work session?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Chair DeMoss?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. First, tonight, we have our preliminary revenue estimates for fiscal year 26. Mark Magruder, Director of Management and Budget. Thank you, sir, for being here with us this evening.
And as Mark gets his presentation pulled up, he's going to present to you different numbers than I've been sharing with you in a less formal setting based on some additional information we got today.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. So tonight I'm going to talk about our revenue projections for fiscal year 26. What I like to do is I like to give a little background each year on our revenue categories. And as we've talked about in the past, county revenue falls into 2 categories: undesignated revenue and designated revenue. Undesignated revenues are unrestricted revenues, which means that they can be used for just about any purpose. Designated revenues, on the other hand, are restricted revenues, meaning that they are earmarked for a specific purpose and can only be used for that purpose. And so right now, if you look at this slide, you'll see that about 89% of our revenue is considered undesignated and 11% is considered designated. And as a general rule, about 3 revenue categories drive the bulk of the county's revenue, and that is real estate, taxes, personal property taxes, and sales and use taxes. And so that's really going to be the focus of the presentation tonight. I wanted to talk about that 89-11 split that we have, because if you remember in years past, we received more revenue from the state. So if we go back to, around the Great Recession, our revenue was about 80% undesignated and about 20% designated. And so I point that out just to say that over time, local revenues have outpaced the state's revenue support. And as a result, local governments have been responsible for generating the revenue to adequately fund public education, public safety, and our constitutional officers. This next slide shows the county's revenue growth each year. And it's basically made up of 2 separate components. One is called the base change, and then one is called new growth. And really what we're talking about is sort of our existing revenue growth that occurs during the current year, and then new growth that occurs in the next year. So what I like to talk about is the fiscal year 25 base revenue change. And as you know, the budget is an estimate, so as actual revenues come in, they can be more or less than the budgeted estimate. And so when we have more revenue coming in that's exceeding the budget estimate, that adds existing revenue growth to the revenue picture. And we have that this year. So what we're looking at in that particular category is the ongoing difference in that revenue on a year-over-year basis. So what that consists of is actual new construction that is over the existing revenue budget, actual acquisition of new personal or new business property, and the actual consumption of goods. So that's one piece of the component. Then the second piece is new revenue growth for the next fiscal year, which is fiscal year 26 new revenue growth. And that's new growth that we haven't received yet. And that's projected new growth in new construction, projected new personal or business property, and projected increases in the consumptions of goods such as sales taxes. So when we take the base revenue change plus the new revenue growth, that gets us our total revenue growth for the next fiscal year. I'd like to talk a little bit about the fiscal year 25 revenue trends. Revenue growth is continuing to be strong. And this year alone, we've had some significant growth in personal property. Revenues are projected to exceed estimates by $2.1 million in just that category. And to kind of put that into perspective, that's equivalent to 7 years of revenue growth that we received in 1 year. That growth is due to several things. Walmart and Target remodeled their stores, which added a considerable amount of business personal property. FedEx and United Therapeutics added more value than we had anticipated. And then the Commissioner of the Revenue changed the rate at which property depreciates, and that added value to for tax purposes. In addition, we've had some extra earnings and interest, which is about $0.5 million. Real estate tax collections are up around $300,000 due to new construction. Sales tax collections are projected to exceed the budget by $200,000, and then all of our other revenue categories combined are estimated to exceed the estimates by $200,000. So when you take that all together, we expect the county to exceed our revenue estimates in the current year by around $3.3 million. This next slide just kind of shows you the breakdown there by category again. Again, we're looking at around $3.3 million in additional revenue over our estimates. Of that amount, we expect $2.6 million of that to be retained in the base. So before we even start adding new growth for fiscal year 26, there's $2.6 million that can be added just out of the base growth. What we expect to see this year is interest earnings are projected to be flat as we expect interest rates to drop over the next year, so I don't see any growth there. Sales tax is down due to changes in school-age population. That number is split between the two towns, so when the school-age population changes, the amount of revenue that goes to the two towns changes, and so we're seeing a slight decline on the county side as a result of those changes. And then other revenues are expected to be down about $100,000, and that's due to them being one-time in nature in fiscal year 25. Talk a little bit about the revenue forecast in general, or what is happening across the country. Throughout the year, budget staff reviews reports by the Congressional Budget Office, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and the Federal Reserve. And that information provides a picture of what's happening in the local economy as well as the national economy. And so what we're seeing is that the U.S. economy has remained strong over the past 2 years, surprising many analysts as economic activity has continued to expand. The outlook for 2025 is positive with moderate growth projected, but at a slowing rate. And as you know, the U.S. has been in the longest expansion and economic expansion in U.S. history over the last 5-6 years. And we saw a little bit of a dip that occurred during COVID, but then everything kind of shot right back up again. So things are still strong. We've been talking, years and years about the potential for a recession. They've taken that completely off the table. So things are still things are going very well at the moment. Some considerations, the labor markets have eased, but inflation is still above the Fed's 2% target. Stock market valuations are at all-time highs. Real estate valuations are still at peak levels. And vehicle values have dropped from peak values, but are stabilizing. If you remember a few years ago, we had $269 million that was added in 1 year to the personal property book. Then and that was 10 years worth of growth in 1 year. Over the next 2 years, we applied an assessment ratio to bring those levels back to what was normal. We had an 85% assessment ratio and then a 90% assessment ratio. Last year, we did not apply an assessment ratio because the levels on the book value, real book value, had come back in line with where we thought they should be. So there was no assessment value added last year. So we're seeing the book has been dropping, but the values are stabilizing, and that's a good thing. Talk a little bit about fiscal year 26 new revenue growth. Historically, new undesignated revenue growth is around $2 to $3 million. If you go back about 6-7 years ago, we were right at around $2 million. The last 3 or 4 years, we've been around $3 million per year. And we think that $3 million is something that is going to go on for a while. At least we have no indications that it's not. Projected new revenue growth for fiscal year 26 is actually 5.1 million, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So there are some assumptions. Actual real estate book value for calendar year 25 and known construction for 26 are in those numbers. Actual personal property values based on the calendar year 2024 book and historical growth patterns were put in to come up with these revenue estimates. Sales tax growth is at 3%, which is what our traditional growth rate is. And the big thing for this year that is really pushing that number up is the Mountain Valley Pipeline at 2.2 million, and that is added to Public Service Corporation revenues. And then, of course, normal trend analysis for all other categories. This next chart kind of just goes over the same information, but it shows you the detail of what makes up those dollars. Real estate is expected to grow by 1.3 million. Personal property tax at 900,000. The pipeline we're estimating at 2.2 million. Sales tax at 400,000, and delinquent taxes at 300,000. Total growth of new growth is 5.1 million. Next slide shows the total undesignated revenue for fiscal year 26. Total undesignated revenue is estimated at 153.9. That's a $7.7 million increase. If we start with the base revenue, which was last year's approved budget, 146.2 million, we add the 2.6 million in additional revenue that we're collecting over the estimate in the current year. So 2.6 is added there. New revenue growth of 5.1. Total revenue growth is 7.7, and our estimated undesignated revenue for fiscal year 26 is 153.9 million. Talk a little bit about the state budget. According to the schools, additional new state funding for fiscal year 26 is estimated at just over $1 million, and that's based on the governor's proposed budget and an average daily membership of 9,115 students. On the county side, the proposed budget has compensation board increases of 3% on July 1st of 2025. That amount of additional funding is just over $216,000. However, there is non-supplanting legislative language that requires the county to provide a 3% increase to receive the revenue. If the county provides a 3% raise, then this revenue can be used for just about any purpose to cover other county needs. And that is all I have, and I will be glad to try and answer any questions you may have.
The category that changed since we had shared information with you previously was related to the pipeline personal service corporation revenue. That's a new type of revenue for us, and it's assessed using a different method. The State Corporation Commission will provide that to us, I believe, the assessment, which we won't receive that until the fall of this coming year, of the year that we're in right now. We are basing the estimate on what the pipeline has shared with us as their estimate. They've had outside consultants, financial consultants, prepare that $2.2 million. And we wanted to confirm with them, we were using a lower number for that estimate, but I was able to confirm with them today that they still think that's a good number, so that's the number that we're presenting for transparency.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. So let's get started with some questions for you. Supervisor Biggs, do you have any questions?
Not right now, thank you.
All right. Supervisor Grafsky, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. So one on the real estate side. So you were talking about potential impacts, kind of more high-level macroeconomic type things, and real estate valuations still at peak levels. I've read some things, specific to more like commercial real estate and commercial vacancies. And so do we have any risk of any, write-downs or decreases in assessed values on like commercial real estate? I don't know what percentage commercial makes up of the whole book, but.
Yeah, really the only risk would be, there's no risk in the current year or the following year. The only time that you would have that risk would be during a reassessment year, in which that value would be reassessed at a lower value because of vacancies or what have you. It's possible, but I don't see that. I think that if we were in a place like New York, where they have issues with vacancy, or you have a lot of big office buildings that are not being utilized like they once were, I think that would be more of a risk than what we face here.
Okay. And then my other question was about the sales tax revenue growth at 3%. I think like GDP estimates for this year, for 2025, are in the 2.1 to 2.5% range. I know our region is kind of growing a little bit faster than others locally, but any concern that we're...
I'm not really concerned. Last year I projected 3%, and right now we are above that 3% margin. 3%, if we had stayed at 3%, I would be flat on revenue. I'm exceeding the estimate in the current year by $200,000. So I think a 3% growth factor is appropriate for where we are at this point.
Okay. All right, well, great. Hey, thanks for all the information. Appreciate it.
Okay. Looking down here, Supervisor King.
Thank you for being here, little buddy. Hey, on that $5.1 million, that's including that 2.2 from Mount Valley Pipeline, right?
That's correct.
Just my concern, the Corporation Commission could say you don't get nothing, right? So I don't think we need to include that when the budget starts coming up, because we may not get all of it. Is that correct?
They can't say we are getting nothing. They can't say.
I mean, but they could lower this.
They could lower this.
Yeah.
But yes, they could lower that. It's based on three factors: the amount of gas that is transmitted through the pipeline, the cost of the gas, and the cost of the construction of the pipeline.
Right.
But it's at their discretion. They have a formula, but we have to use what they give us. You're correct.
But I mean, and I appreciate you doing that, but what I'm just doing is cautioning this board: don't spend it before you get the check in your hand. Thank you.
Supervisor Kitts.
So as we're looking at the undesignated growth because of real estate and because of the increases, correct? So I'll make sure I'm wrapping my head. You know how I am with budgets. So
Yeah, so I mean, if to kind of put it in perspective, our yearly annual growth is, the last couple of years, is about $3 million. And so I'm projecting $3 million in growth plus the 2.2 to get you to the...
Yeah, but the 3.3, I'm trying to stay with that because as we look at the real estate tax rate, as you start looking at everything, that 3.3 is a standard growth point as we move forward based on current values and current rate.
The 3.3 is what I expect us to exceed our revenue in the current year.
Exceed it at the current rate. Okay.
Yeah, in the current year. That's correct.
Okay. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Bone.
I'd like to get back to the Mountain Valley Pipeline, just so that I have a better understanding of it. Is there gas flowing through it at this point in time?
Yes.
And has it been consistent, over the last several months? It hasn't, been a lot one month and none the next month. It just kind of flows. Isn't that how it works? It just keeps flowing?
I assume it just flows. That's what I assume, but
no idea.
It was turned on. Gas started flowing through it before the end of the year and before the end of the calendar year.
Is it at full capacity?
I don't know, but I asked if the estimates were still valid, and I was assured that they were still valid. So I would assume that the answer is the amount of gas they projected to flow through the pipeline is how much is going through. I don't know what they thought that would be.
So my question would be, in future years, if it was running at 100% capacity, would this number go up significantly?
One of the factors is the cost of the gas that's being transmitted, so that would be a factor. Another factor is the cost of the pipeline itself. So if that's depreciated over time, like Mark spoke about, the way we depreciate personal property for taxation purposes, that would make the amount go down. So there's a variety of factors.
Have you all kind of,
We don't know what the exact formula is, and we can't get anyone to tell us what it is. We've tried.
have the people that you have talked to at Mount Valley, have you asked them about future years? Is it going to be pretty stable? Is it going to go up, down? You have no idea?
Well, because the cost is one of the factors, that's not predictable. He indicated that would be a fairly steady amount.
The 2.2?
Yes.
Okay. And is the 2.2 for a partial year or a full year?
Full year.
Full year.
And how do we get paid? Like, do we get
Twice a
paid
year.
twice a year?
Like real estate.
Have we gotten paid at all yet?
No, they haven't, we've not been paid by them at all because they haven't been assessed yet. They were not, the way the process works, they're not assessed until January 1st of the year after the gas line goes in service, the pipeline goes in service.
Which was last month.
It was last month, so we're waiting on the values. The Public Service Corporation always sends those out in August or September for all of the utilities, right?
Yeah, it's in September.
Okay, so they send them out for September. So the June payment for all utilities is an estimate based on the year before. That's how we bill that out of the commissioner's office. And then it gets trued up when the actual assessment comes.
So July 1, we'll have no revenue until after September. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, when is the first payment?
I assume it'll
comes
be
in December.
December 5th.
Yeah, December
is when
5th.
it'll be due.
So will that be 1.1 million about? Because we get paid twice a year?
I think that I think that might be 2.2 because they'll need to pay for the June and the December payment.
Can you just verify that?
Yes, I will. I'll verify that.
That'd be great. Can I ask more questions, or is that my time?
I think you can ask a few more questions.
Could you, back on slide 4, just explain, refresh my memory about the Commissioner of Revenue change of the rates in which the property depreciates, what that was about, or what were the changes?
Okay, so for personal property, there's a depreciation schedule that basically, as the longer that you own an asset, it gets the rate at which you pay taxes on it goes down each year. So in some instances, and I don't know these verbatim, but it might go 10%, 20%, 30%. So it might be assessed at 90%, 80%, 70% every single year. To be more uniform, they had different depreciation schedules for different types of personal property. And they went to a uniform depreciation schedule where everything would be depreciated at the same level. And so in certain circumstances, things that were depreciated faster slowed down. And by slowing that depreciation down, that added more value to the book.
And this is for personal property excluding vehicles, right?
That's correct.
For example,
Business furnishings and fixtures.
it's all business related,
Yes,
not individual, non-business related.
that's correct.
Okay. Any complaints about that from anybody?
I have not heard any.
Okay,
I've not
just
either.
curious. I have more questions, but
Let me see if anybody else has anybody, and we can come back. Vice Chair Fidzikowski?
I don't really have a question, but I am concerned about keeping the whole $2.2 million and applying that towards the budget. I think we ought to kind of, I'm not proposing that we withhold the whole 2.2 like Supervisor King, but maybe half of it or something, because that is a concern when you're pretty much at the mercy of an entity that you have no control over, you can't even oversee it. So, I mean, that's all I got. I don't have any questions.
Okay, do we have any more Any more questions on this side? I do have one question, and then we'll get back to Supervisor Bone. On slide number 10, when you were talking about the comp board increase, 3% on July 1, and this is just for my understanding. So if the county provides a 3% raise countywide, then the state will pony up the 3% for the comp board positions, kind of like they do. We've seen that happen multiple times with the schools, for example. Am I correct?
Basically, the way that it works is the comp board will provide a 3% raise. We are obligated to provide at least that dollar amount. It's not a 3% raise on the county's piece. It's the dollar amount equivalent of 3% applied to the comp board position. So for instance, even if somebody was making $30,000 a year and the comp board said that they were supposed to make $28,000 a year, and we were paying more than that, we would still have to give the equivalent of 3% on the $28,000 as a dollar amount to cover that. If the county gives a 3% raise, since everybody in the county is already making more than what the comp board provides, it's enough to cover that requirement.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. Thank you very much. Supervisor Bone.
And I get the sense of how do you figure out what fiscal year 26 base will be? Is it just fiscal year 25 plus the new base that, you know, of 2.6, and that's it? You don't add any more because of expected more revenue?
No, the 25 amount is based off the book value that's currently being assessed. So that's how much revenue we're going to be picking up in the current year.
Mhm.
And it's exceeding the estimates because when I put the revenue projection together last year, we weren't sure exactly how much revenue we were going to bring in. And so for the instance of the personal property tax revenue, we grew at like, I think it was like $59 million just in that one category. And that's like 6 or 7 times what our normal growth factor is. I would love to say that I would have known that before it happened, but you know, we don't normally grow at $59 million in one year just on that business personal property category. So I didn't know that ahead of time to be able to project that to say, hey, that's going to happen. We now know that it has happened, so that amount is already there. So we're collecting that in the current year. So I can count on that. I don't anticipate that number going down because it's already on the book. And so then I'm adding new value to that value that's already there.
So then I jump to, I'm just getting a little bit confused with regards to the base. So if we go to slide 9, and you have the base change from 25, and the expected new revenue for 26, you don't add any base to 26 until 26 is over?
The base is like a true up. So we have, like Mark said, he did his estimate for fiscal year 25. Now we know more because we're
right.
partially through the year, and some of the factors are known, like he's talking about the personal property book. So we're basically truing that up. We would not add any more to the base after that. But then the additional part 2 of the equation is for the new growth that we project in fiscal year 26.
And we don't call any part of that base.
That's correct.
Until what point?
Then next year at this time,
Okay,
he would
so-
trip 26 and change the base.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And back to slide 5, the reason why we don't do all 3.3 is because we're fiscally conservative or responsible, and we don't want to over plan on
we don't
assuming that
anticipate-
all revenues are going to continue the way that they've been. We
Right,
gotta put
based
a-
on the information Mark provided about the interest rates and those other factors.
I have more questions, but I can be stopped. It's completely up to you.
We've got time for just a couple more questions, and then we'll move on to the next item.
Okay. So slide 6. So moderate growth is projected, but at a slowing rate. But you mentioned that recession is not even part of the conversation anymore.
Well, I mean, you can always find somebody that'll tell you
Oh,
that
I
there's
know.
going to be a recession, but
From you being the crystal ball for the county that I could say, love so much because you're so great at what you do, you would be concerned about a recession if we remotely needed to be concerned about a recession. Is that correct?
yeah, I mean, you know, they're projecting GDP growth that is in the normal range. And that's happening at the federal level. And so I don't see anything out there that is screaming, you know, hey, things are, you know, doom and gloom. You know, there's nothing to indicate that. Now, that's not to say that something, you know, couldn't happen, but at this point, I have no reason to think that things are not going to continue on the path that we're currently on.
I might be done, but give me a second. Yeah,
Okay.
done.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time this evening and for providing your expertise. We really appreciate hearing from you, Mark.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Okay, and we have one more presentation in work session. This is our comprehensive plan update on Montgomery matters, and it will be presented by Justin Sanders.
Hello.
Not Franklin.
No one else is going to get that.
Bree did.
Well, good evening, board members. Thank you for having me this evening. It's been a little bit of time since I've spoken with you about Montgomery Matters, and I wanted to come this evening and give you an update as we are now 8 months into our 18-month process. We are slightly ahead of schedule, and we're hopeful that we will actually be able to bring a draft comprehensive plan to you a little earlier than we expected, so maybe the late fall. As you might remember, we are working with EPRPC, a consulting firm out of Charlottesville, to assist us with drafting the comprehensive plan update. This is an update to our comprehensive plan. Our last plan was adopted in 2004, and we do update that plan periodically every 5 years to meet our state code requirements. So I will jump right in and give you an update on where we are. We are in step 4 of a 5-step process now. We've gathered data, we've identified needs in the community, we've done some visioning, and now we're actually at the process of developing and evaluating recommendations. Throughout this entire process, we have been continuing our engagement efforts. It was very important to staff as we went through this process that we were hearing from the community at every step. We want to make sure we're getting this right. We want to make sure that we're being reflective of the community's opinions and views for the future. So that engagement throughout the entire process has been really important to us. So I'll sort of give you an update of each step of the process. So the first step was to gather and analyze data. We spent a lot of time looking for data at various sources. We didn't want to duplicate any efforts that were already existing. So we looked at data from a variety of different sources. We were very thankful for the New River Land Trust. They were able to provide us not only survey data from previous efforts, but a lot of land use data and GIS data that we were able to plug into our existing mapping. The Public Service Authority, talking about public infrastructure, the New River Health District, building permit data from the 2 towns, and then meetings with various other county departments to get the data from surveys and other efforts that they have done. We also looked at a variety of population, economic development, and housing data from the U.S. Census. That's the decennial census, as well as the American Community Survey, which is done on a more regular basis. Information from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and then the Weldon Cooper Center at the University of Virginia. They do yearly population estimates, so that's really helpful for us, not having to wait for that census data to come out on 5 or 10-year increments. We analyzed that data and identified emerging trends. We compared that data to peer communities. We're looking not only in the New River Valley, but we're looking to compare the trends that we're seeing to make sure that they're not isolated to our area. So looking at benchmark communities of Albemarle and Rockingham counties here within Virginia, But we also thought it was important to benchmark against a community that was outside the Commonwealth. So we looked at Orange County, North Carolina, which is home to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, to give a comparison with a large university. And then those findings were all compiled into a data analysis report that we're calling the State of the County report. That's been made available on the Montgomery Matters website. You can go through and get really granular with the different data that we received and sort of see what those emerging trends are. So the next step was identification of community needs. We did a multi-point approach on getting this feedback from the community. The largest way that we did that was through a community survey that we have over 1,000 responses on. We also developed a map survey where individuals could go in and pinpoint an exact location in the county and share feedback on a feature or something in that area that they liked or wanted to see improvement upon. And on that map exercise, we got over 300 individual comments. We also, throughout the fall, summer and fall, did a number of public intercept events. We did 11 total. These were going out to festivals and events that were happening throughout the county, actually speaking to the citizens face-to-face and getting their feedback. And through those public intercepts, we spoke to over 850 individual citizens. We've also held 20 stakeholder meetings over the past 8 months. These are individuals from a variety of community organizations and citizen groups. Over 80 stakeholders have been engaged through those efforts. And then we've held 2 public open house events, one in June and the other in November. A total of 70 citizens between those 2 meetings and 600 individual comments that we were able to put in and again, match it against the data that we were seeing and those trends that we were seeing. So a little bit about who responded to that community survey. Most of the respondents, 75%, were county residents who were full-time residents, and 75% of them identified as property owners. 65% of respondents live in one of the 2 towns. That makes sense considering the 2 towns are our major population centers. 11% lived in an unincorporated area of the county outside of one of the identified village areas, and then 24% lived in a village area. We did notice that response rates for those under the age of 30 and in certain underrepresented populations were a little bit lower than we would have liked to see. We didn't get a great representative sample of the community based in those areas. So that will inform how we're going to do our village outreach efforts so that we can make sure that we're getting feedback from those who identify in those groups. And like the State of the County report, we summarized all of our engagement activity within an Engagement Matters report that's also available on the Montgomery Matters website. So we moved then into visioning, and this I think was for us one of the most exciting parts. We actually took the data, we took the feedback, and we started to put words on paper about what those things were going to mean for us as we move forward. So we worked on establishing a county-wide vision that will sort of be the main thesis of the comprehensive plan. Montgomery County is a vibrant and resilient community where forward-thinking collaboration and initiatives empower all residents to thrive. The words that I've highlighted here for you, vibrant, resilient, collaboration, those were words that we heard multiple times throughout the engagement process. We heard that in the survey. These are the things that people think about when they think about Montgomery County. And another item that came up repeatedly was making sure that all of our residents had an opportunity to be successful here in the county, regardless of age, race, creed, economic status. That was something that came out repeatedly throughout the process. Something else that came up for us were sort of these 4 what we're calling core matters. These are in all of the different stakeholder groups and all of the different topics that are covered within the comprehensive plan. These are themes that emerged and talk to the cross-disciplinary nature of what we're doing in the comprehensive planning process. One area is going to inform another. So what we're doing with the core matters is these 4 words here are going to be a lens through which we're going to be looking at all of the goals that we're drafting to make sure that one chapter is speaking to another chapter. So the core matter of intentional, an intentional Montgomery County takes the initiative to anticipate opportunities and implement solutions before problems arise. An accessible Montgomery County provides opportunities, services, facilities for everyone, regardless of their abilities, age, health, housing status, identity, or income. A resilient Montgomery County maintains a healthy environment, strong community, and reinforced resources, ensuring the well-being of all of its residents and the ability to recover from adverse effects and challenges. And then a collaborative Montgomery County is where local and regional governments, institutions, organizations, and residents actively work together, share resources, and engage in partnerships to address common challenges. So these are the lens that we're going to be looking at all of our goals through, but those ideas coming up, again, are representative of what our citizens see currently happening in the county and what they would like to see going forward. So as we're developing recommendations, this sort of goes to how the document itself is going to be organized. We have 3 key areas of focus: culture and the outdoors, which encompasses the environmental resources, cultural and historic resources, and recreation chapters of the plan; a community development focus, where we talk about land use, housing, and economic development; and then a health and services focus area, which covers education, health and human services, public infrastructure, and public safety and welfare. And I'm going to go through sort of the high points of the goals as they're being developed for each of these 3 areas of focus. So environmental resources is probably the area that we got the most feedback from our citizens. It's the area that people were the most engaged on throughout our open houses. So within environmental resources, we're going to be talking about natural hazards, natural resource stewardship, air and water quality, floodplains, karst soils, and green footprint and sustainability. Under our cultural and historical resources section, we'll be talking about historic preservation, viewshed preservation, cultural facilities and fine arts, and then regional collaboration. And then under recreation, we talk about regional access, regional collaboration, recreational programming, incorporation of the environment and cultural resources in our parks planning, and community health through active living. Within community development, land use goals, you'll notice many of these have carried forward from our existing comprehensive plan, but we've honed in our focus a little bit more in some of these areas. Balanced growth, sound fiscal planning in terms of the cost benefit of investing infrastructure dollars and service investment in how we're planning for future land uses, collaboration and coordination with neighboring jurisdictions, and then resilient and inclusive communities. Under housing, this is an area that we're doing a much more expansive set of goals than our existing comprehensive plan, which, believe it or not, only had 1 housing goal. We're looking at livable neighborhoods, safe housing, and then attainable and diverse housing as our major goal focuses. Within economic development, we're talking about economic development's impact on quality of life here in the county, workforce development, location and land use. This is looking at potential land for future commercial development here in the county and future industrial development, attraction and retention of business and industry, diversification of industry here in the county, and then how we can work to increase wages here in the county. And then under our health and services goals, looking at education, high quality educational facilities, educational programming, a dedication to lifelong learning, childcare and early intervention, and then high quality libraries. Within health and human services, livable communities, regional cooperation and collaboration, health and well-being, human services and facilities, food access, which is something we did not cover in our existing comprehensive plan, but the community has been very vocal that we need to be considering. And then vulnerable communities, another topic that we heard a lot about from our citizens. Regarding public infrastructure, looking at both public and private water and sewer service in the county, innovative technologies, solar and renewable energy, electric and gas utilities, broadband and internet, and solid waste. And then last but certainly not least, public safety and welfare, public safety and emergency services, again, that collaboration and cooperation, and then again, looking at vulnerable communities. And you can see here, some of these goal themes are repeated, but again, I think it speaks to how interrelated public safety and healthcare are, how interrelated education is with some of these other focus areas as well. So in terms of next steps, we'll be moving into plan development. So we'll be finalizing the draft goals and then attaching some strategies to implement those goals over the next 20 years. We'll be reviewing those in February with our stakeholder groups, as well as our Montgomery Matters Steering Committee. And then we'll be putting out another public survey in March to have citizens go in and give their feedback on the goals and the strategies that have been identified. The way that we're going to do that so that it doesn't overwhelm everyone is those 3 buckets that I shared with you. Someone will be able to go to the Montgomery Matters website and choose the areas that matter to them, go in, provide their input so it's not so overwhelming and them looking at 60 or 70 goals. We're also currently planning our village outreach that will be starting in the spring. The project team is currently identifying criteria to define what a village is in this next comprehensive plan. What features are common between villages. But we're also looking at some land use data to determine whether those village boundaries need to be changed to encompass more area or whether they need to be refined as we go forward. And then for each of the villages, there will be another set of goals that will be developed that are under that larger umbrella of the county's goals. And again, as I said, our hope is to bring a draft plan to you in the fall or the winter. So we cannot do this alone. As I said, we've got a great consulting team assisting the planning and GIS staff, but our Citizen Steering Committee has been an invaluable resource to us to bounce these ideas off and to make the connections to get us into communities that we may not have had access to before. The Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, we appreciate your support as we've gone through this process. Our stakeholders, which continue to take time out of their busy schedules to provide us input. Jen and her team in public information and community engagement helping to promote all of the outreach that we're doing. Parks and Recreation, they have been a great partner. They sent out our survey to their entire, how many, 700? Or sorry, 7,000? How many people are on your mailing? 7,000 people on their mailing list that we were able to connect to. And a little later in your agenda, there's another opportunity that we'll be able to partner with Parks and Recreation in some long-term planning efforts, general facilities, and then our community partners and civic organizations. It really has been a tremendous process. We've gotten great feedback. Everyone that we're speaking to is really positive about the direction that the county is going in and our future. And it's really great as an employee to be able to hear that every day. So with that, I have the opportunity to take some questions if you have them.
Thank you, Justin. And thank you so much for doing a lot of work to keep us informed as you've gone through this process. It has not gone unnoticed. We've seen a lot of you, and I've seen a lot of you on social media as well. So thank you for everything that's been done to continue with this effort. I'm going to see if anybody's got any questions. We'll start with Supervisor Kitts, just because you weren't looking at me, so it went to you first.
So you said you're going to start engaging youth, and that was a discrepancy. So what's your plans to go ahead and do that? Are you trying to take advantage of more QR code stuff?
Yeah, so it's getting the information in front of them is the first part, but I think particularly when we think about our college age population, they view we're only going to be here for 4 years. You don't want our input, but what we find is when we can actually talk to the college students, they're using a lot more of the resources and services that the county and the 2 towns provide than I think they realize. So I think there's an education piece in saying, hey, you exist in this community for 4 years. You may choose to stay. We want to know what you would like to see to encourage you to stay in the area. We've also had discussions with MCPS on ways that we can get information distributed through the schools and to parents as well. So we're hoping to get some engagement there. A long-term dream that our staff has, we call it Planners in the Schools. We talked about it in our last comprehensive plan, but we're still figuring out the best way to get that program off the ground. Because again, I think it's about showing younger citizens where they fit in the grander scheme. I just don't think they have a seat at the table, and we want to change that mindset.
Thank you. The other one is, you talked about food and discrepancies, like food deserts. I know I've seen some studies on that. So that popping up like that within the county, where is that really and I know you may not know this, but where is it focused at for the questions on that?
So there are a couple of different elements with the food insecurity issue. There's making sure people have access to food. There's also making sure they have access to the right food that might meet the needs of their individual diets, religious considerations. So we've been speaking a lot with our community partners, New River Community Services,
Live, Work, Eat, Grow.
Thank you. LWEG.
Proud board member.
Yes. We've been speaking with them as well. We don't want to duplicate efforts and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we're going to the subject matter experts on food insecurity, finding out where those gaps are and determining through our goals and strategies how we can supplement the work that they're already doing.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor Bone, any questions for Justin?
A couple. In one of your slides, when you're going through resources or goals, part of the environmental resources, you list karst soils. And when I was first looking at it and listening to you, I'm like, okay, how is that, like, resources to me are like, they're bringing something to the table. What's karst soils have anything to do with that? And then you can think about it in a different way. We just need to focus on taking care of all our soils and stuff like that. What are you talking about with regards to that, please?
It falls into being very considerate about where we're doing development in the county. Karst soils create unique challenges in terms of sinkholes and caves. We want to make sure that we are preserving those areas in terms of public safety. But also, you're right, it does fall into a larger soils conversation and making sure that those prime agricultural soils that we have available in the county are maintained, as agriculture is a major economic driver here in the county. So it does fall in kind of both areas.
Is there something special about karst soils? I've never heard of that.
I am not an expert in karst.
And then the only other question that I had to do with housing. And I think it was part of the goals. And I wasn't sure if that, we've been talking about affordable housing. And then you had a list, somewhere in your list that said attainable and diverse and vulnerable communities. Can you kind of talk about those?
Yeah, so I can kind of drive down a little bit more. So with livable neighborhoods, that's looking at mixed income neighborhoods, diverse housing stock, and then connection to services. So multimodal transportation options, public services, open space. So it's really sort of thinking of individual communities as having all those resources on a kind of microcosm level that we're looking at in the larger aspect of the county. With safe housing, it's supporting high quality, secure, and well-maintained housing. And one of the proposed strategies there is rehabilitating existing homes and ensuring safe, accessible features in new construction. So that's the safe housing piece. With attainable and diverse housing, it's ensuring that there's a variety of housing options by size, type, tenure, and cost, providing opportunities to residents of all income levels, preferences, and abilities. So that's the differentiating factor there. I think that answered your questions.
Supervisor King, no questions. Okay, looking at this side, do you guys, Supervisor Biggs?
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, first of all, the enthusiasm that the planning department has shown and the hours that you have spent that are not related at all to the hours that you spend here are greatly appreciated. Having been involved in comprehensive plans before, this is the most comprehensive and inclusive plan I've ever seen. And one thing I wanted to comment about the food insecurity, when I was doing that research and Jennifer Harris helped me out with the 13.5% that we have in the county. I think there's a related problem to that, and it's transportation. And I think that transportation problem also impacts a lot of these other things, especially in the health field and that. Have you found that?
For sure. And I want to remind everyone, we did adopt transportation matters back in 2023. Mm-hmm. That's functioning as our transportation chapter. So when we're talking about the update, I don't want transportation to feel like it's being excluded. We'll be bringing that back in when we get the other recommendations and strategies identified, so how we can make those all work together. But you're absolutely right. Having reliable, dedicated transportation gives all members of the community access to services. It gets them access to residential and commercial ventures in the county as well. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about, particularly in health and services, but also when we're looking at land use planning, is going to tie back to our transportation challenges that we've identified. And the Transportation Matters Plan identified that we not only need to be focusing on our roads, but we also need to be focusing on multimodal transportation and making our pedestrian, bike, and mass transit safer and more reliable here in the county.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Grafsky.
I don't have any questions, just, to kind of piggyback on some of the praises that Supervisor Biggs, was saying. As a member of the steering committee, I've been involved in some of these conversations, and I'm just so impressed with all the work that is going on, and the collaboration, the engagement, not only within the group, but in the community and things like that. So just hats off to y'all for the work you're doing.
Appreciate that.
Vice Chair Fijkowski.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I'll pile it on too. Such a huge, complicated issue, and you guys are really whittling it away, and I appreciate that because you go into great detail, and that's should be very helpful to us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin, for the update, and I'm sure we'll see you again very soon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that's all we had today for work session. Is there a motion to come out of work session?
Motion.
Second.
All right, we got it all. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fijikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
And I have a motion on our consent agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fijikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Moving into our new business section, the first item on our agenda tonight is the special use permit for the 199-foot monopole telecommunications tower. That was what we heard about earlier in our public hearing. Is there a motion?
I would make that motion.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fijikowski?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Montgomery County Public Schools Capital Fund Transfer.
So
This is-
moved.
Second.
Okay. Do we have anything to present on this? It's a small item for...
It is a small item. It's just to move some funds that are in the future projects category into a specific project for Christiansburg Middle School. And Ms. Bland is here if we have any other questions.
Are there any questions about that? Okay, it has been motioned and seconded. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fijikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is an appropriation for Montgomery Museum of Art and History. This is related to the Virginia 250th Anniversary Preservation Fund. And we do have a very brief presentation from the museum executive director, Sherry Wyatt. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us. The Virginia 250 Preservation Fund grants that we were competing for were highly competitive. The matching funds approved by this board late last year proved to be critical in the museum's successful grant application. We wish to share our deep gratitude for your financial support and for your commitment to the successful celebration of Montgomery County's 250th anniversary. For me personally, it was an honor to serve recently as the part of the Historic Courthouse Bell Committee, and I was glad to see that project to its completion. And I'm looking forward to working with county staff and volunteers on the Montgomery County, Virginia 250 Local Arrangements Committee. We are pleased that the museum will be able to support the county in the 250th anniversary celebration with our Access Montgomery County project. We were officially notified of our grant award from the Virginia 250 Preservation Fund on January 17th, and our first meeting with Department of Historic Resources staff is expected on February 26th. Engineering drawings for our project are complete, and we expect that construction will be scheduled soon after signing the contract with DHR staff. Initial planning for the large regional history exhibit that will culminate this project is underway. The Montgomery Museum will work with municipalities across Southwest Virginia to create an exhibit that features objects and stories for the very large land area that was originally part of Montgomery County. We have a unique opportunity here to highlight Montgomery County's role in the founding of our nation and the development of our region. This grant project provides a spotlight and marketing opportunity at the state level as we celebrate Montgomery County's 250th anniversary. Making the museum fully available to people of all mobility levels is an important step in fulfilling the museum's mission to connect and engage the community through the arts and preservation and interpretation of history. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I'm happy to answer questions if I can.
Do we have any questions about this? Okay. All right. Now, just a reminder, the action that we need to take tonight is to appropriate the funds for this project. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if you'll, oh wait, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Right, the next item on our agenda is a appropriation for the New River Valley Passenger Rail Station Authority, and I think staff has some information. That was a mouthful. I think staff has some information for us before we move on this.
This appropriation is just to provide a match to an Appalachian Regional Commission planning grant that the authority was awarded to help with the architectural and engineering study for the station.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it has been motioned and second. Does anybody have anything, any discussion? No? Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, and our final item of new business is an appropriation for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and we have made him wait long enough. Our Parks and Recreation Director, Mitchell Hawk, is here with some comments for us. In a suit. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. I'd like to first thank you all for your support in Montgomery County Parks and Recreation. I'm also here to talk about the need for an updated Parks and Recreation Master Plan. A lot has changed since 2016 when our last master plan was completed. Just in the last 5 years, we've built and opened one park in eastern Montgomery, Creedfield Park, and getting ready to bring New Reiner Park online this year. The new Reiner Park alone will double our current field space. I'm super excited at the possible opportunity to work with EP&R, the same company planning is working with, for the comprehensive plan. Having the two plans mesh is very important. Our goal with EP&R is to have multiple public meetings throughout the county, citizen input, working with our Parks and Rec Commission and staff to plan for the future of Parks and Recreation here in Montgomery County. I think it is important to plan for the future and hear what the citizens of Montgomery County want related to Parks and Recreation. I would like to thank you for your time and consideration of appropriating money for the master plan. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
No
Why are you wearing a suit?
I requested
I'd
a
be remiss if I didn't
tuxedo.
tell him how
No
desperate
comment.
he looked.
I didn't recognize him.
Do we have any real questions?
No.
No. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so
you.
much for being here.
Thank you, Mr.
So do we have a motion on this?
Moved.
Second?
All right, this is one that I really wish that I could actually make the motion myself. Thank you.
Do it.
I can't. I'm not allowed to. That Robert and his rules say no. But no, I'm very excited about this study for the reasons that Mitchell mentioned. We have made such incredible progress, and now we kind of need to take some time and say, where does this progress need to go from this point? So the Parks and Rec Commission is very excited. This is going to be a really great benefit, especially as it corresponds with the Montgomery Matters study. So I hope that everybody is supporting this evening. Is there any other discussion?
No pressure.
No pressure. I will be disappointed in you. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to our reports. County Attorney's report.
I have no report, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you, thank you. County Administrator's report.
I have a quick report.
All right.
The Planning Commission has postponed their meeting that was scheduled for this week until next week due to the weather. And thank you, as everyone else said, for your hard work with that. I know it's been quite an undertaking, and you're doing a great job. Another shout out to one of our staff members at Eggs and Issues this past week. Brian Hamilton spoke on the panel about economic development, along with Katie Boswell from Onward NRV and Kevin Bird from the Regional Commission, and he did a really great job with that. It was nice to attend the bell dedication that was mentioned earlier. It's at the courthouse. If folks want to go by and see that, it looks really good. It's right in the lobby of the courthouse, and it was restored, and there's a story about it, so that was really cool. And the last thing to tell you is that we're opening at planning to open at 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll see how that goes, and staff has a method to let everybody know what the decision is. We'll decide by around 8 in the morning. That's all I have.
Thank you, Angie, for making that decision proactively. I'm sure that helps a lot of people with planning. We'll move into supervisors' reports, and we will start tonight with Supervisor Grafsky.
I do not have a report this evening.
Okay. Supervisor Biggs.
Okay, just a shout out again to Brian. He did a great job, Brian Hamilton at Eggs and Issues. The bell ceremony was a good one, and also we were able to attend Dr. Sands' State of Virginia Tech presentation that was held in the Moss Center. Chair DeMotts and Vice Chair Fidzikowski, myself, Ms. Hill. Did I miss anyone else? We're there, right? And it was, it was really educational, but what really blew my mind, the extent of what is going on at Virginia Tech with research. It was just incredible to hear the people actually involved in what they were doing, and it's way over my head. I just can't believe what's going on there. So it was good, and that's it.
Thank you. Supervisor Bone.
I want to thank my fellow supervisors for a great extended work session and the ability to share each other's perspectives about a lot of things, but as it related to my attendance, I really appreciated that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kitts.
No report.
Supervisor King.
No report.
Vice Chair Fidzikowski.
I really liked going to the bell dedication. That is awesome history. It really is. And to have two of our own deputies push that, it makes it even more special, because I think that thing would still be sitting down in the basement of the courthouse if it wasn't for them pushing on that. So a lot of thanks to them. It's something we gotta hang on to, our history, and if you get a chance, can't miss it. It's right there in the middle of the entrance hall to the courthouse, so go and take a look at it. That's all I got.
And I just have one thing to add. I want to thank the staff that attended the extended work session with us this weekend. We spent quite a bit of time together on Saturday answering questions, planning for the future, and it doesn't go unnoticed that many staff were involved in preparing for that meeting. So I also want to make sure that that we recognize the many people that were involved in planning for that. So when we got to the meeting this weekend, we were ready to go with lots and lots of information. So thank you all for committing so much time on your weekend to do that with us. And unless there is anything else, we stand adjourned.